Other areas where we've seen the websites fall short, it's really been like no team photos, no before and afters, no trust signals. You're going to hear we're saying the same thing because we have to. It all goes into these different elements. So, as Anthony said from the beginning, if you're taking the time to take those pictures and videos and do these things, extend them across multiple elements. Don't forget about your
Mhm.
website. And, that last piece is really gonna be that just the understanding your website is your 24-hour sales representative. Welcome to the Contractor's Edge, the show where we break down the tips, tools, and tactics you need to grow a stronger, smarter home service business. Whether you're in a truck or in the office, we're here to give you the advantage you need to win. I'm Mike Stiers.
And I'm Anthony Brown.
Today's episode focuses on top contractor mistakes and how to avoid them. These came straight from conversations that we had at the Voices of the Industry event in Indianapolis with Foundation Rescue Supply. We felt that the contractors really came ready to learn, ready to challenge themselves, and ready to grow. And what we noticed the most, businesses just aren't struggling because they're doing everything wrong. They're struggling because they're doing a few critical things wrong, repeatedly, and without realizing it. So, Anthony, I wanted your take on the FRS event. How'd you feel?
I really liked it. I told you when we first started going out to conferences as the agency, right? That in those environments where you get everybody there, like ready to learn and like inspired by each other, hearing the stories of the challenges that everyone else faces, and it kind of makes you feel like you're not the odd one out, right? We're all going through the same challenges, especially when you have these conferences that are niched down to such a specific industry, right? It's very helpful. So just being in that energy, I think, kind of sent me with some energy back to the office. I heard plenty of things that I can reflect on and utilize in what we do and in like the consulting that we offer, essentially.
Mhm.
But I know because I had a handful of clients there myself that there was a lot that they felt that they took out of it, and that energy or that inspiration that you leave those kind of jacked up.
Oh yeah, I felt it too. I just love the questions and the engagement and just the fact that, and I know I had mentioned it on LinkedIn as well. Just the fact that like a lot of these guys, they're like local competitors to each other as well.
Hmm.
Because this was more of a regional event. We did see folks coming from all over the U.S., but for the most part, these were states that were Indiana or touching each other, and they were really helping each other out. Which I was like, man, this is such a great event for that exact reason, and
Hmm.
and to see that camaraderie was really inspiring for me as well. So,
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
for this episode, I felt like it was really important to just shine the light on these blind spots, and a lot of them came up. We had great questions, in our presentations, and then even in like a lot of the after hours. But there were a lot of questions around like the overall marketing strategies, lead management, certain things that were happening in sales, which I can't wait to shine a light on those, and then even operational mistakes that we felt like were kind of holding these companies back, and they
Hmm.
felt the same. And when we started talking about it, they were just like, "Oh my gosh, more information, please." So, I'm excited to dive into this with you. I know that we've put together, we feel will be a really good show to help contractors understand what they're doing wrong. And most of the time they don't even know that they're doing it wrong. And we want to give some ways to kind of help fix that as well. So, for our listeners, we just asked that, you subscribe, like, and review the show wherever you're listening. It really helps us, and it helps us understand that, you really care, especially when you send over those questions. It helps to kind of pump us up. So, without further ado, Anthony, start us off with the edge of the week.
All right. For the edge of the week, this is another opportunity to kind of ride the wagon of that FRS training and the presentation that we did. If you guys haven't like subscribed to our newsletter type of thing, you should do that. We sent out these presentations for you guys to be able to see and review. And of course, you can always reach out and ask us questions. But what I wanted to focus on was the Google or the local business profiles. It's not just Google, right? And sometimes people do forget that. There are Apple Maps and Bing Places. These are not as important as Google, like just to be square about it, but it's another avenue, another pipeline that you can get leads coming through, whether that's directly off the listing or organically on your website through the extra credit you get for having that listing, essentially. So one thing I always say is that when it comes to the source breakdown of leads coming into your business, you always want your business profiles to be the number one source of the leads you have coming in. Say you have 100 leads that you get in a month. If you can't get 30 to 40% of those leads to be coming off of this listing, it means that there is an opportunity to improve. And this particular opportunity would most likely be shaking up that mix to where less money is going towards your paid sources, right? If you need 100 leads and you can get 30 to 40 of those from the Google, not just Google, but from the business listings, then that means less of that burden is placed on your paid efforts, which means more dollars in your pocket, which means a more healthy marketing strategy overall, right? The other things I want to talk about on this listing is leveraging these listings and making sure that they are primed and optimized to give you the best results back to your business. So make sure that you are asking for and generating reviews. I know we talk about this all the time. I'm going to remind you guys, don't make this an end of the process thought. Talk about the fact that reviews matter to you when you're booking an appointment. Talk about the fact that reviews matter to you when you're doing your inspection. Talk about the fact that reviews matter to you when you're finishing your project. That way, by the end of it, you've kind of already created that frequency of the message. You know, you're able to get it through to them, and you're priming them that if you do good work, that you're going to ask them for a review, and then you ask them for a review. It is very important that you get reviews, especially with the kind of environment changing around AI and search. A lot of the times, your brand is going to be what, you know, takes you across the finish line. And part of that brand or social proof is how much people in your community put you above your competitors, right? There are people like me out there. When I'm picking restaurants, I'm looking for the one that has the highest reviews and the highest number of reviews, because that is validation for me. You want to entice consumers like me, right? The next thing is just like activity, and that also does go into the reviews. If you get more reviews, that is activity going on to these listings, and it helps elevate the position that you get when people are searching, when they are looking for what you do. Another opportunity to get activity is by posting to your listing. If you're posting on your social medias, your Instagram, your Facebook, your TikTok, you know, your LinkedIn, whatever it is, emulate those posts and put them onto your listings, because that is also going to show activity. It's another opportunity to get some relevancy and keywords in there, help Google and these other platforms understand your business and your customers. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is the Q&A feature that is on Google specifically. This feature is an opportunity for you to ask yourself questions and then give your consumers or your customers answers, right? So if you have frequently asked questions, you know, how important is waterproofing your basement? Here's a good one. How often should you clean your air ducts? How, like, these really general questions that you know a lot of people are asking. If you can ask those questions about yourself to your business and then answer them, that adds activity, and it also gives relevancy and keywords, keyword value, like, baked into that listing as well. So make sure you're doing all of these things. And one of the quick, you know, green light, yellow light, red light things you can look at is how many of my leads, what percentage of the leads that I have coming in to my business are coming in off these listings.
That's fantastic. All really great points. And, for our listeners, again, Anthony racks it up with more freebies for you. Putting focus in your business is not going to cost you money, but instead return it. One little piece that I'll add in there is just something to be on the lookout for, more for, the folks in your marketing department or the agency that you're working with. Google just announced the introduction of incentivized reviews. And this is specific
Mhm.
for e-commerce and product reviews, but it comes with a special link and it has to have some designation. But that kind of gives me a good feel that they might be warming up to the fact that they're going to accept these incentivized reviews, because it's natural for a business, once you've completed the work, to send off a request. And sometimes companies are offering things, up front, and, Google's terms of service say you can't incentivize the review, but come on now. We know everybody's out there incentivizing the reviews. So I'm optimistic. This will actually just kind of grease the skids for more reviews and help those local business profiles grow. So for those companies out there that are putting efforts in on getting reviews, let's keep our eyes peeled because I think we're going to have something sweet coming soon. But on to the meat of the feast here. I really want to dive into what we feel like the contractors are doing wrong, whether they know it or not. And we're going to start with the marketing and advertising front, because this really has to start with like your brand identity. And with that, we always say consistency on top of it. We kind of joke, and I'm sure that this is something that might be, fairly common, but if you are looking at your company and, for our listeners, this is something you need to do. Literally do a brand audit yourself. If you're looking at your website and your branding and, looking at anything else that you're putting out, your trucks,
Hmm.
billboards, if number one, your logo looks like it's from 2010, that's a concern. This is the time for a refresh. You can see that the big brands win and polish wins, and those that aren't, or you're just this whole like chunk of text, you're kind of being ignored. And it's just because of this generation and the focus. So, understand that, you need to focus on these elements. And from there, take that in to be consistent across all of the platforms. You need to ensure that like your trucks, your website, social media, even your invoices, yard signs, uniforms, these should all have consistency in colors and logo. So if you have gone through a recent refresh and you didn't invest and making sure that that's consistent across the platforms, please make that a concerted focus. This should be a part of your budget, for 2026. Get this in place. You put money into getting a refresh. Let's get it across all those aspects. And from that branding, you should have like a brand voice, and you should have a story, a mission, and a vision, and then your fingerprint. What makes you unique? Why should people do business with you? What makes you different? These are all of the focuses. Forbes says that consistent branding actually increases revenue by 23%. That to me is just mind blowing. And my last
Hmm.
point on the brand identity and consistency is really just take photos of your team. It doesn't matter if you're carrying buckets, if you're loading a truck, before and afters, the guys are out, doing some kind of work, or you're sitting with the homeowner. Like, get these pictures and get those posted, and share them across social, your website, your business profiles, as Anthony alluded to, because you can't keep using stock photos across your assets. It just looks ridiculous. And this is a great time to kind of take your stance and start evolving that.
Yeah, and I'll be a little bit more confrontational about it. There's no excuses at this point in time to not take photos, guys. All of your team have like mini movie cameras in their pocket from 10 years ago. Like the technology is so advanced these days. Please take the time, make it part of the requirement of the job, put it on your job description if you have to. You need these photos. They are tools at your disposal and your marketing team's disposal to help you grow your business. So
So true.
on the branding aspect, because I know if you're a regular listener, you know my background comes from like the branding world. It's radio, TV. Uh, when I came over to the agency with Mike, digital became even more prominent as a tool that we utilize. But it always represents itself to me when we work with a client that does not uh, dedicate a lot of attention towards their brand, or we work with one who does. Everything gets easier on the paid side of things too when you have a brand identity, when you invest in your brand, when you put your message out there on platforms such as Google, like the business profile, for example. If your customer has already been introduced to you and knows your brand and recognizes you when you come up next to your other three competitors, a lot of times you can win that selection before the search even happens, right? The same thing is true on LSA, where all you have to show them is the number of reviews you have, like one picture and your name. So if your name means something and means something more than your competitor, a lot of the times you can win that opportunity. So
Good points.
the next thing I wanted to talk about is what are some mistakes that companies or marketing teams can make around social and content, right? We talk about it all the time, how important it is to engage with your customers. And I think social is one of the easiest low barrier to entry opportunities that you have to communicate with your customer base. Um, some of the mistakes that people make when they are doing this interaction is inconsistency, right? So you're posting happy 4th of July and you did a cookout and like you were really excited and that was the moment, right? Like, let's take some photos and you posted. And then I go look at your Facebook and the last post that you have on Facebook is from 4th of July,
Mm,
right? There
yeah.
are people who are there are people who are somewhat like me, but the same way that somebody could potentially only search on Google Maps, right? Like that, there are the people out there. And instead of going to a Google search bar, they just open up the Maps app and they type out, plumbers near me into the maps instead of onto a Google search that doesn't give you as many opportunities to catch their attention. If you are not consistently posting on your Facebook and they find you on Facebook from doing a search like that, they go plumbers near me on Facebook and they find your profile and your last post was July 4th, happy Independence Day. They might think you're out of business. They might think you're not the right selection for them. So post consistently. It is something that like feels like a chore. Find somebody at your organization that enjoys it. Set a benchmark for how often you need to get these engaging messages out there. There's somebody who does not look at this as a burden in your business, like 10 out of 10 every time. All right. Um, Another thing is not updating your photos. So, and also what photos you select. You want to have enough of this going on that you can be selective about your photos. One thing, talking to contractors specifically and directly, if you're posting pictures just of befores without the afters, you're not showing the story entirely. You're losing value from that. Like, you're trying to create an emotion, right? If you were showing off this work, you're trying to go, oh, look how bad things were and look how good things are after. So you can't miss that second cue, because in a lot of ways that second cue is more important. The first cue, depending on what industry you're in, a lot of the times is discomfort or fear, right? Like, you've got something going on and it makes you uncomfortable, or it worries you. And that is why you're reaching out to this contractor. You need to show them that resolution of that fear or
Mhm.
uncomfortability, right?
It's proof.
Um, and then also try, and this doesn't have to be every time because I don't want this to feel like too much of a chore, right? But do case studies. Don't just show before and afters, but please do show before and afters. But tell a little bit of a story. Say, hey, it's been a while since we've been into this neighborhood. We found this home that was dealing with this problem. We proposed this solution. The homeowner was really happy at the end of it. Tell a little bit of the story. Show that you care about your customer base. It Highlight reviews. Even so,
Mhm.
like, if you can tie that into a testimonial, that could be in the case study as well. I like to say, be artistic about showcasing the reviews. There's a difference between just snapping a little screenshot of a review and then making a post. You probably want to style that one. Use your brand guide, put a little bit of, makeup on it, essentially. But do highlight, especially the reviews that are like stellar. If you run a good business, you're going to have at least a few of these, right? That people are screaming from the mountaintops how happy they are that they worked with you. Highlight that. Create more customers like that for your business. And then lastly, team wins. Celebrate things with your team members. Did they just have a new baby? Did your production manager just get married? Did your celebrate things? Try to create this camaraderie, this
Mhm.
tie into the emotion. Become a person that can be part of these people's lives, even if it's just for a second. They can tune in and be excited about you. One of the things that we did recently at the agency is our Halloween party. And I can't tell you how many of our clients are like, oh, it was so nice to see your guys' costumes and you guys seem like you have so much fun. And they're not, it might sound superficial, but these are really good things. It is creating that bond, and you want to have that with your customers too, right?
Completely.
And then the last thing on social is the mistake people make is not boosting. So it wasn't long after Facebook got incredibly popular for businesses, that Facebook realized we cannot allow businesses to get their message out here this easily. We're losing the opportunity to make money. And they're not wrong, right? And their platform does have value to businesses in being able to spread their messages. So they monetized it. You can't blame them for that, right? But basically, when you make a post and it's just to your following, it's just to your following. If you have 70 followers, you have the potential of showing your ad to 70 people, unless one or more of those 70 people share or like or engage. And then it tacks onto the algorithm. Oh, we're going to show to a few of the followers of that person that they liked this content, right? That's the only way that you spread the message, unless you utilize the boosting feature. This is something that's very inexpensive for you should at least 1 or 2 posts per month, at least 1 or 2 posts per month. Put some extra dollars behind it. And I am talking dollars, not hundreds of dollars, not thousands of dollars. You can do a couple dollars a day, and it will help spread that message. It will make that snowball grow faster and faster. And when you do this, you'll get more and more followers, which makes that snowball grow faster and faster. So it's one of these snake eating snake, just like systems that continues to benefit you. And it's very inexpensive. And you want to be sharing your message as far and wide as you can anyway. So
Completely. Yeah, I mean, especially if they're putting the effort in to create this engaging social that evokes the emotions, like what you're saying, that targeted boost is very small. I mean, you can start with, you know, a zip code or a few zip codes and, you know, really reach what you're looking for and get that engagement. And then you can turn those folks into followers. So,
right.
no, I love that. Well, let's talk about website failures. You know, this is kind of a touchy subject. You know, admittedly, Anthony and I had gone back to the team at the agency and kind of gave them an opportunity to weigh in and give us some feedback. You know, this is one of the elements that they have, you know, brought up, and they take it very seriously because, you know, we often try to educate, you know, the business owners so that they can make the appropriate decisions. And sometimes we're just insistent. And so when we work with our clients, we kind of take a lot of things out of the decision-making process because,
Mhm.
you know, they're coming to us to work with experts and we can't let them make the wrong decision. So with that, I mean, you know, contractors, go and evaluate your website. If it's slow, you know, if it hasn't been updated, let's say, I mean, I hate to even think, let's say it hasn't been updated in 6 months. That breaks my heart. You should be updating on a regular basis. You know, I know that we have a note in here, not mobile friendly. If your website's not mobile friendly, start looking for a website company that can help you or an agency or someone, because this is like time to make sure that you're on a relevant platform to where you can show on mobile. That's the majority of the searchers.
Mhm.
You know, if your website is built on like Wix, Weebly, or Squarespace, it's time to make a move, you know, somewhere else. I mean, specifically our agency, we build 99.9% of our websites on WordPress because it is the industry standard for SEO, for rankings, for integrations, you know, and for speed. And it's open source, which means there's a lot of collaborators in, you know, our side of things. We've got some pretty amazing developers that have built some pieces that are our custom, you know, pieces that can be implemented on a WordPress site since it is open source. So it's pretty cool that you can do things like that. You know, other areas where we've seen the websites fall short, you know, it's really been like no team photos, no before and afters, no trust signals. And you're going to hear we're saying the same thing because we have to. It all goes into these different elements. So, as Anthony said from the beginning, if you're taking the time to take those pictures and videos and do these things, extend them across multiple elements. Don't forget about your
Mhm.
website. And, you know, that last piece is really going to be that just the understanding your website is your 24-hour sales representative. This is where people should be coming. You know, if they didn't
Mhm.
convert on your local business profile, then they're probably coming to your website. They need a little bit more information. So you've got to be able to answer those questions. Who are you? What services do you provide? What makes you unique? You know, what is your service area and how to get in contact with you? And, you know, if you can't convert those folks, you're not even going to get an opportunity with the appointment.
Yeah. I it, it it's one of the things we get the most animated about talking about
Mhm.
websites. It's probably one of the more expensive services that you'll encounter with an agency, right? And it's actually a frustration that I have when I talk to contractors. Because if I'm talking to you and we talk about a certain tool that you're using to do your job, you will talk about why you want to use the best tool. Like say it's an impact driver like drill, right? Oh, it has this much torque. The battery life lasts this long, so I don't have to recharge it. I can get this much work done faster because of this reason and that reason. But when I talk about websites with contractors, it's like a bulletin to them. And I need you to understand this would be the most important bulletin you ever had in your life if it was just a bulletin. Okay.
Yeah.
I like the analogy that it is a vehicle for your business, it is your work truck. Yeah. Sometimes it can cost that much, right? But is it rewarding your business as much as your work truck is? I would argue most of the time it's rewarding more, right?
Yeah.
Like it is that 24-hour salesperson. It closes jobs for you and you don't even realize it, right? It brings you the leads and the opportunities. It tells your story. That I can't emphasize enough why it's so important. It was funny. It actually came up during the conference after my presentation. One of the questions that I got was a contractor who was kind of doubting why people put so much emphasis on their website. Like, why do I need to redo this every 3 years? Like, why do I need to change with the times? Uh, why should the website cost this much? And, like all these kind of general obstacles or objections that we would regularly get about websites. And my response is always the same. It costs you nothing. If you do it right, it never costed you a thing. You might have put some dollars out initially. It has given every single dollar back. I would be shocked if there's a single business out there, it doesn't matter how bad your website is, that hasn't paid for itself. It just does. Like it's an investment vehicle, and it's one of the best investment vehicles you have in your business. So just make sure that you are putting in the work to make your website stand out from the others, to make it rank. Mike brought up the like WordPress build. If you're working with another agency and they're building off of WordPress, find out how universal that CMS or that basically building platform is, because it these days it feels like if you're not building on WordPress, it's kind of because you're trying to sandbox your client into only working with you. Because chances are, if
Good
you
point.
want to have your website changed in the future and you're not working with that agency anymore, the next agency is going to say, we have to build you a whole new website because we don't work in that platform. Or if we did work in that platform, it would take us longer because we don't regularly work in that platform. So just keep that in mind. WordPress is the standard. Everything that you can do on any of these other builders, you can do on WordPress. And unlike the other builders, it has that universal like appeal to it that you're not locked in doing the same thing with the same people every time.
That's so true.
This actually weaves in really nicely, Mike. We're going to talk about SEO misunderstandings. So SEO is actually very much a love and hate relationship between me and SEO. SEO was actually a service we didn't like offering at the agency. It felt very snake oil. It felt very, I can't tell you how it's working or why it's working. You just got to do it. When we talked to other agencies, Mike was the marketing director at Basement Doctor in Nash, and he had to talk to people about SEO. They paid for SEO, various times, and it constantly felt like people can say a lot of words and they can't show a lot of merit, right? And so we took some time to make sure that we understood the ways that SEO is beneficial and valuable to a business. I can say it is one of my favorite things to sell my clients now, and it's something I truly, truly believe in. But there are misconceptions of how SEO works, and people are measuring it in ways that are detrimental to the overall strategy, right? And I want to remind you guys that. So SEO is a slow, methodical process that over time will result in returns to your business. When you look at how many organic opportunities you have gotten in a given month, it is a control of your visibility in that month and the demand of that month, right? So traffic is not just alone coming from SEO. It does come from demand. If there's like a reason why people are not looking for your services right now, you're not going to get a lot of organic search traffic. And that has nothing to do with how well your SEO is running, right? There's just not a lot of people searching. However, visibility is what would get you, when there are searches, the most attention to your stuff. And that visibility is really controlled based on these instances over time of activity, of content, of traffic, of sending really good signals. And that is what an SEO program is meant to do, is look at your website, look at your overall digital profile, and look for opportunities to increase the number of signals that are going to raise your visibility in that placement. They call it SERPs, right? Search engine ranking position. It used to be pages, but they don't really do pages anymore. But and it's no longer just Google, which I want to keep reminding people. We pretty interchangeably say Google when we mean internet these days. With AI, the market is somewhat in flux. There's constant interchange. Here's a good example. You know how a lot of people like moved from California to Texas or to Florida, and like that's what it feels like. It's a changing of the population. Some people are moving over here, some people are moving over there. And because of that, there's more opportunity to be had on these other platforms. You should be focusing your SEO to include looking at Bing, Apple Maps, your Google business profile, AI models, and agentic search browsers. So it's a whole new game these days. And I can't tell you enough how SEO is the best weapon or tool that you have in this agentic browser, like AI search world that we are being ushered into. If you go on Google, we'll use Google. If you go on Google right now and you search a inquisitive question about one of the services that you offer, one of the people in your market is going to win that search. It's going to have citations going back to their blogs or their service pages. It's going to say, like, say I ask, how long does it take to do a kitchen remodel? It's going to show me one of your competitors, and it's going to have 3 different articles that competitor wrote that talk about how long a kitchen remodel would take, and that now becomes the authority to that searcher. You want to be that authority, and you want to win a share of those searches. So, strong SEO requires FAQs. That search I just told you about, that's another one that could have been served based on having a really nice and robust FAQ. Answer that question. Then the AI is going to find you are the answer to the question. Case studies. So we talked about that on your social pages as well. These are opportunities to talk about the services you do, to talk about the problems that a certain homeowner had. And so when people are searching, those signals get picked up, right? Service pages, local references, and value-driven content. If you have invested in SEO at any point in your life, you've probably heard the term backlinks. It's probably the funniest term that I don't fully understand, but it's basically a network of reference that you're creating online that says, you link from here to here, and that means that you're worth something in the eyes of Google or whatever search platform it is. Look for opportunities to do that and build your backlinks with reputable, like other businesses or, organizations. So if you're a member of like Chamber of Commerce or something, make sure you make it onto their directory. Make sure that your directory like listing backlink is properly like coded and set up. And then if you have beneficial relationships with other contractors, whether they're adjacent to your services or even sometimes competitors, you guys can exchange backlinks by writing articles that include each other. So look for opportunities to do that. Backlinking does still have a ton of value in the eyes of all of the search platforms.
Completely. And I love that last little piece because for our listeners, I'm sure that you can think of a complementary company that you already have a relationship with that maybe you're feeding, leads back and forth, or even you're providing part of the service and your partner is providing the other part of the service, complement each other. Write a little bit about these things and even do the promotional handoff almost between to create that backlink. Like you were saying, it's so much about like almost a popularity contest on the internet, if you will. So it's the way I always looked at it. If you get on the news and you get a little backlink and, that drives a lot of traffic, it's pretty cool stuff. And that actually does a great way of segueing into, local business profiles. Anthony, you did an awesome job hitting it, in our edge of the week. So I'm just going to briefly kind of jump through these, but these are really important things for people to understand. And most contractors are unfortunately doing this wrong, or someone within their organization who is responsible for maintaining these or setting them up even has
Hmm.
really dropped the ball. So, essentially, when we're talking about the local business profiles, we're talking about Google, Bing Places, Apple Maps. These are essential because these are like that beacon that allows for people to be able to find your business and should be the number one driver of traffic to your business for phone calls and website traffic. So, with that, the biggest obstacles that we often see are, not being verified or being suspended. And these days, Google just made an announcement. If you like local service ads, you better make sure that you are verified and that your GBP is updated, because they are pausing LSAs right now. So local service ads can get shut down, if everything's messed up there. But on to the optimization side of things, the photos are outdated. I know, Anthony, you harp on this frequently, that showing the wrong photos or the wrong information, having the categories selected wrong, even having like a wrong telephone number, wrong website URL. We've moved into the HTTPS, and that S is for secure. And a lot of people still have an HTTP, and we were informed by the SEO team that is like something completely different. Hey, news to us, but now we're like, hey, we got to let everybody know, make sure this is updated. One of the big pieces that our dev team got back to me on is that they wanted to make sure that we mentioned in this episode, verify who has access. So who has access to your business profile? Because if the wrong person or a previous employee or a previous agency has access to that, guess what? They can shut you down. They can hold you hostage. They can do very nefarious things. They can change URLs, change telephone numbers, steal your leads. So, we
Or
always talk about this like profile hacking. It's real, and it can happen so quickly. So just make sure that you're verifying these access points. Another thing that we wanted to touch on is just the fact that a lot of people don't understand the associations that are happening now. So as Bing Places are kind of being talked about more and more, this is a pipeline from the AI tools like, Copilot and even ChatGPT. So those are two elements to watch out for. And then with Apple Maps, this is the number one map tool for iPhone users. It's the default tool. A lot of people haven't gone and downloaded Waze or, Google Maps. And instead, they're, just deferring to the Apple Maps pack. And like Anthony was saying, sometimes people won't even go and do a general search, in the browser. They'll just use the maps to do a search. So if you haven't taken the time to do everything for your business that we've talked about, then you're doing a disservice and you won't be found.
yep. So I think one thing I wanted to say on that, Mike, is the categories, the wrong categories on your Google business listing or whatever listing it is. Check what categories are available.
Mhm.
Google does not tell you when they change their categories.
True.
We work with a lot of businesses whose categories have changed multiple times over the last 5 years, for example. So just double, triple check that your categories are correct. And then on the profile hijacking point, like access requests, even more frequently, what'll happen is somebody will leave your business and they're the only one who had access to it, and like that email is gone. They don't check it. You never are able to get a hold of that person. We're now having to do like a hostage takeover thing when there's no actual hostage taker. It just has been forgotten, right? So make sure that you have access to your stuff so this doesn't happen to you. It happens so much.
Yes, it does.
I want to talk about conversion rate optimization. It does go back to the argument about how important your website is. One thing that I said in the presentation when we were in FRS is that for every deficiency that you have on your website, it's extra dollars that go into your marketing plan. So like if I'm sending 100 users to your website that's qualified, searchers, and they get to your website and there's something that's off-putting to them, and like there's some type of signal that doesn't give them the warm and fuzzy and they end up leaving, that is a lost opportunity. So having a beautiful website that's impressive, right, that is optimized to convert the people who land there, it means that you're saving money. That's how I want you to look at it. Long, like drawn out forms, weak call to actions, missing phone buttons, confusing navigation. These are all things that are going to hurt the effectiveness of your website, which again means more dollars wasted.
Yeah.
Sticky headers, prominent call to actions, short forms, internal linking, call tracking. These things change everything and make your efforts more effective.
Yeah. Conversion rate optimization is something that I feel like just doesn't have the focus or the conversation, and that's fine. I don't necessarily expect like a business owner to understand these things, but we're telling you that they're incredibly valuable. I know that we've talked about this in previous episodes. This is something that just needs a focus, whether it's for you or your marketing team or your agency. These are things that are being done wrong, and you as a business owner are, you're responsible for it. You've got to find the right person to fix it. Um, this was another sticky note from our account management and account support team. This is really talking about access problems. Often when we're onboarding a new client, when we kind of jump into things, we find that they don't know what they should have access to. They don't know who has access to it. It creates huge security red flags. It's something that could just paralyze a business at
Mhm.
the, drop of a dime, and it's incredibly scary. So our support team asks that we make sure that we touch on the points that evaluate, understand, where is your domain, where are you hosting it, who has access. These need to be priorities. If it's not necessarily a priority for you, then you should have delegated this to someone that is now responsible for that, because you've got to make sure that previous vendors no longer have access, former employees don't have access. Once these transitions take place, someone has to be a gatekeeper, because if you don't now have access to it, or this is actually happening with a newer client for us. We do a collaboration with another agency, and as this client came over, they didn't realize that they didn't have control of their domain, and now their URL expired. Like, that's really, really scary stuff. And like, for us, when we heard about it this morning, it's heartbreaking, because now that process falls on that business owner to go through the verification, and this is going to slow down the business, and they literally cease to exist, and you're hoping that you can funnel enough through your Google business profile in the time that it takes you to go through and get all of this information updated, regain access. So I know I'm just giving one example, but this is like literally, it would be crisis management 101. So
Mhm.
something to put in like front of mind is that you have all of these. And that goes into like Google Analytics, Google Ads, like any of the properties that are associated with your business. Either you or someone in your organization need to be the owner of those.
Yes.
Incredibly important.
Absolutely. It's tragic when you have issues like that. Website going down. We've spent 2 sections of this episode talking about how important websites are. So
Yeah.
you can imagine what's being lost there. Next thing I want to talk about is diversification in your advertising strategy. I think this year was a really good example of why you need to be diversified. There are so many different offerings when it comes to what shows up when somebody searches now, that if you had all of your eggs just in the search basket, things would have been really rocky through these transitions, right? So, single channel dependence kind of kills growth. You can have a very stellar year, but it's going to be volatile because that one channel may not be as strong for you next time. You may get more competitors that come in. Over reliance will always be punished in the future. We only do SEO is something that I hear a lot, or we don't believe in Google Ads. We only run to LSAs. I want you guys to remember. That it's funny because this actually came up at the conference too. what's happening here is you've had an experience, and I'm not here to invalidate that experience. I'm here to tell you that there are other experiences that other people have. Some people can do something and execute on it well. Other people can trip and fall over their own shoelace, right? If you've run a TV campaign before and it wasn't successful, that does not mean that TV doesn't work. If you run a Google Ads campaign and you felt it wasn't successful, that doesn't mean that Google Ads doesn't work. So, if you are one of those people who found kind of that safety channel, and you put all of your dollars there, I promise you the opposite of what is happening. Safety is the opposite of what is happening. You're actually in a very scary position where if that channel fails you, if something happens there, then you have nothing. So diversify. It protects you from that platform volatility, and ideally, it increases your overall or total lead volume. Paid, organic, brand, social, connected TV is the modern mix. 2025, 2026. You want to be present where people are. That is going to give you the vast majority of all of the people across those particular platforms.
Yeah, and diversification in the advertising strategy, it's one of the things where, we're saying that a lot of contractors are doing it wrong because we know just based on the masses that we're talking with on a consistent basis. And so I like to flip that. And this is an opportunity,
Mhm.
as all of these platforms are changing, as the homeowner's experience and their journey to even find you or find your competitor is changing. This is the opportunity to get on top of it, diversify, work on your strategy, because this is going to pay dividends when you find that, you've increased. We always talk about, throwing out the net, right? And, baiting all of these hooks. This gives you the opportunity to be found, and then also to find these individuals that may want or need your service and they haven't found you yet. That's going to wrap up part 1 of episode 13. When Anthony and I finished recording this, we looked back the clock and realized we had unintentionally created a 90-minute monster. So we made the call to split it into 2 parts. For those listening on the release date, tomorrow morning, you'll get part 2. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. We dive straight into lead management, painful truths about missed calls, business hours that cost you money, nurturing, rehash, in-home sales mistakes, and operational KPIs that separate growing companies from stuck ones. Make sure that you're subscribed, and part 2 is going to hit your feed first thing tomorrow morning. We'll see you in the next episode.